We now move on to our next panel session titled Decarbonisation in Motion, Reinventing Logistics for a Low-Carbon Future. In this session, we hear how forward-looking companies are turning climate ambition into tangible action. From electric fleets to warehouse retrofits to digital optimization tools, our speakers will discuss how logistics players can prioritize decarbonization while balancing cost, readiness, and impact. The discussion will also cover enablers, roadblocks, and the collaborative approaches that help the logistics ecosystem move faster towards a low-carbon future. Similar to our earlier session, the QR code will be displayed on our screens to allow you to send in questions throughout the session. The panelists will also address selected questions during the final 10 minutes of their discussion. Now, we're excited to present our next group of industry leaders who are pioneering sustainable transformation across the logistics value chain. It is my pleasure to invite Ms. Guo Yiran, Director of Policy at the National Climate Change Secretariat, NCCS. Ms. Guo, over to you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I am Iran from the National Climate Change Secretariat. I look at policy issues. And in my line of work, I have two very important objectives. The first is really setting Singapore's climate ambition and then finding a way to get there. So when you think about NDCs, when you think about net zero, that's our job. But also secondly, and very importantly, economic transition. How do we ensure that as Singapore and the world progresses to a state that is lower carbon, but also more subject to climate impact, Singapore as a whole and as an economy can continue to stay economically competitive. And therefore, it is such a treat for me today to be able to moderate this panel with my three very esteemed panelists who each have very deep expertise in their own logistics company, and they've been really spearheading the sustainability journey. So I could introduce them first, Mr. Christopher Ong, Senior Vice President and Managing Director at DHL Express. So thank you, Chris. Next, Mr. Ryan Woon, Director at EcoSwift. And third, Mr. Sunil Nambiar, Head of Operations for Group Strategy, Sustainability and Communications, YCH Group. Okay. So thank you again to our panelists for being here, and thank you to the audience for joining us. So maybe let me start by letting our panelists introduce themselves, their companies, and also really maybe focusing on the question of what got you started on this sustainability journey. What were some of the opportunities that you saw and some of the risks that you were seeing on the horizon that you thought, going into sustainability can help address?
Okay, so Iran, thank you for the opportunity and for the invitation for Enterprise Singapore for inviting us to speak at this event. My name is Chris, Managing Director for DHL Express here in Singapore. I've actually been with DHL almost 20 years now, and the last 6 years or so here in Singapore. And DHL as a company, we call ourselves the world's most international company. And so we like to say that the world is 2/3 covered by water and the rest is covered by DHL. We started this journey on sustainability many years ago. In fact, in 2008, as an organization, we were the first logistics company to commit to tangible climate targets, right? To drive our efficiency to a certain level, to improve our efficiency by 30% by 2012 and 50%, and so on. We realized, and we actually achieved our targets. And beyond that, in 2017, we then set a target to get to net zero by 2050, the first logistics company to do so in the world. Now, the reason why we launched into this climate change Go Green program headlong was because we recognized that, climate change is not going to go away, but more importantly, it allowed us to become differentiated from the market. I think today, if you were to search up logistics and sustainability, DHL will be one of the first names that you will see coming from AI or even from Google. So this has allowed us really as organization to set ourselves apart from a very, very competitive environment in logistics.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Ryan, next over to you.
Hi, thanks Iran. Thanks to ESG as well for having me here. So my name is Ryan. I'm the director for EcoSwift Private Limited. We are a fleet electrification solutions provider. So what we do is not just the truck itself. We also provide infrastructure such as chargers. We also boast Southeast Asia's biggest charging hub at our facility at 5 Tuas Avenue 5. We have a total of 48 charging points, all high-speed DC. On top of that, in August, we launched Singapore's first public battery swap station for trucks. So this will enable trucks to swap their batteries in 5 minutes instead of charging it overnight. Yeah. So the reason why we started this initiative was because during COVID, we saw this opportunity of electrified products in Singapore. And we saw that there's a gap because we know that we are going to go electrified one day, and the pain point was charging and the service structure behind the trucks, right? So we decided to start off EcoSwift, and then we invested heavily in infrastructure, and we also thought about how we can build the service structure behind the trucks, so we enable fleet operators to operate it without much obstacles. Yeah, so that's how EcoSwift started. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ryan. And last but not least, over to Sunil.
Thanks Iran, and thanks to Enterprise SG for organizing this fantastic event today. I come from YCH Group, and for those who don't know, it's Singapore's largest homegrown logistics and supply chain company. We started in 1955, and this year we're celebrating our 70th anniversary. Technology was one of our earliest differentiators. Right from the 1980s, we built one of the first warehouse management systems in Singapore, and we accelerated our progress from there. In the last few years, we've started looking very closely at sustainability, right? All the way back in 2007, we built the first green warehouse in India. More recently, we brought in Singapore's first electric prime mover truck. And the reason why we're doing this is, yes, one, it's a differentiator. One is that it helps us reach out to our customers and go into the market and say we have this value proposition. But more than that is that YCH is a family-owned business, right? So we are not listed. We are 100% privately owned, which means that we tend to think about things over the next 25 years, over the next 50 years, for example. Where will our company be? How do we build resilience into our ecosystem? And so when you come from that perspective, then sustainability is the logical way to go, right? We want to be able to future-proof ourselves against energy shocks. We want to be able to be resilient, be predictable when we go into new markets as well. And that's why we're looking so closely at sustainability. We've set a goal for net zero for Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2040. For Scope 3, we're looking at 2050 as well. We've developed a roadmap on that. And it is one of the most important priorities for us as an organization moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Sunil. So maybe moving on to the next question, I think technology tends to feature very strongly whenever we talk about sustainability in almost all sectors. And the logistics sector, of course, is no different. Would like to pose a question to our panelists that, in the course of your sustainability journey, what were the technologies that you have adopted, that you have really seen great gains in terms of it could be decarbonization, it could also be other core benefits such as operating efficiency, such as lower cost, because we always think, sustainability is expensive, but what I'm hearing is that it may not always be. So what are some of these areas that you really saw the greatest benefits?
I think for us, on the ground, literally, our transition from ICE vans, diesel vans, to electric vans was actually eye-opening for us. We have about 116 electric vans running around the country, which is, I think, currently the largest fleet of electric vans of any, service provider in Singapore. Now, when we first started this journey, a lot of people thought, it's going to be a lot more expensive for us to operate this fleet. But on the contrary, we are actually saving money, right? Because when we compared the fuel utilization of our diesel vans and our electric vehicles, we noticed that the diesel vans consume 10 liters of diesel a day for a particular route, whereas the equivalent consumption on the electric van was 25 kilowatt hours. That translated into roughly $25 in diesel and $12.50 for electricity. I'm saving $12.50 a day per van, and if it's 100 vans, it's $1,250. If we multiply that by 30 days, I'm saving more than $30,000 a month just on fuel, on running costs. Electric vans, and I haven't even talked about the maintenance savings. Maintenance is a lot less. Now people may ask, hey, what about your lease costs? Interestingly, the lease costs for my electric vans are equivalent to the lease cost of a brand new Toyota Hiace. So currently, because the Chinese manufacturers have brought down the costs of these vans to the point where it's competitive in leasing them versus a brand new ICE van, it becomes very, very clear, right? Technology have come so far. A few years ago, when we first started trialing EVs, range anxiety was a big issue for our couriers. They couldn't leave the air conditioning on. But today, with the advancement in battery technology and efficiency of the motors, we are getting 300 plus kilometers a day, and the couriers have no worries about range anxiety anymore. So I'm here to debunk the myth that going sustainable is always more expensive. It's not, right? We have seen many applications where we're actually saving money by becoming more sustainable.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's a very strong message that's really backed by data, that going green is not always, more expensive. Maybe if I move on to Ryan, I think what EcoSwift is doing is so interesting because, I work on sustainability policies, and a hard nut to crack has always been heavy vehicle electrification, because the prevailing view is that, they're expensive. I think certainly they are a little bit more nascent than smaller vehicles, and that a lot of companies are finding it very difficult to move into that area. But you have been pioneering that, and I think you're the first company that brought in electrified prime movers. So maybe just some reflections on how that transition has been. What is the demand that you're seeing from customers, and what are the benefits that your customers are seeing?
I think I can summarize the whole market for electric heavy vehicles with one word: tough. So, with EcoSwift has been started since 2022, and since then we already started bringing in our prime movers, and it has been a very tough sell even up till now. But over the past 3 years, this YCH actually is a customer of ours, and they also have the first prime mover in Singapore. They're actually the first operators in Singapore, and since then, we have gone from strength to strength. We see that a lot of companies are starting to accept electrified products in their fleets. And, the major pain point for a lot of these companies who are looking at electrification is infrastructure. So, over the past few years, since 2022, we've come a long way in terms of infrastructure. Chargers have come down considerably in cost, and there are a lot of public chargers available right now, even for heavy vehicles. That time when we started in 2022, there was almost zero charging infrastructure for heavy vehicles in Singapore, right? And today we can count them by the hundreds. So on top of that, we also introduced our battery swap station, which helps these companies to alleviate their range anxiety. Yeah, so things are moving in the right direction, and it's gaining speed. We see a lot of interest in our heavy vehicles, not just the prime movers, even the 24-footers, these waste collection trucks and all that. Yeah, so we see a lot of movement in the right direction, and we believe it will accelerate even faster next year onwards. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Ryan. It is a tough market. If I remember correctly, this year we introduced a grant, right, for heavy vehicles electrification. So, for everyone out there, I think certainly the market is moving in the right direction. The government is lending support. This is probably the right time to think seriously about the options. So, Sunil, Do you have more to add to this? Because I know for YCH, I mean, you are well on your way to your electrification journey. Were there any sort of reflections or learnings or anything that took you by surprise or anything that was harder than expected that we want to share with our audience?
I think one of the biggest challenge, I mean, sustainability and this shift towards net zero is probably the challenge for our entire generation, right? And it involves so many different players, and the most important one is our team, right? Our staff within the company, and getting them on board with being able to become more sustainable and move to net zero as well. So training is important because it's not only the people who are looking at sustainability reporting and tracking the data. It is the people driving the trucks, it is people operating our solar panels as well, and other parts of the ecosystem, right? So training has been a key priority for us, and what we've done is we've looked at it on multiple fronts. We were recently appointed Queen Bee by the NTUC, and what this does is that it helps us bring all the SMEs within the ecosystem on board, plus our own people as well, in order to train them on sustainability and get them to understand what exactly is involved, for example, in sustainability reporting and the pathway to get to net zero as well. Within YCH, we also organize regular training sessions for our people in terms of data collection, in terms of being able to understand the business value and of sustainability as well. So all this feeds into the broader ecosystem of what we do. We can have the green buildings, we can have the solar panels, electric vehicles, but without the people within our company being completely on board, then it is not possible to move forward. So I think that's the biggest challenge we have, getting everyone on board. But there are systems and there are ways in place that we can actually move forward with this. So.
I actually would like to add to that. I think, a lot of times when we talk about sustainability, people don't spend enough time doing the change management. I think for one of the things that we do at DHL, I think that we've done very well, is to equip our people with the confidence to manage the change. So I give you an example. When we added 100 EV vans, our couriers actually didn't like the vans in the beginning. They would come to me and say, "Boss, I don't like the EV." And I tried to understand what was the objection. And they were saying that it's very jerky. I don't like the way the vehicle drives. Then we realized that they were trying to drive an EV like they were driving an IC vehicle, which they would take their foot completely off the accelerator, and of course the regenerative braking kicks in and they'll feel like it's a jerky ride. So we actually took the effort to train every single courier on how to drive a van, right? And as a result of that, all of a sudden, they started to realize, hey, it's a fantastic vehicle, right? In the past, in a large, if they got a very heavy day, they're doing deliveries in the morning, they have a hard time in their ICE van to go up those big ramps, right? They'd have to rev the vehicle and they have to get a bit of speed in order to go up if it's fully 1 ton of payload in his van. But now with an EV, they have no issues. They just step on the accelerator and the car goes. And finally, one of the couriers actually said to me, "Boss, thank you for saving my butt." And I tried to understand how the comment came about. And he was saying that, look, in an ICE van, right, the diesel engine is sitting right underneath the passenger cabin. If you spend the whole day in the van, it gets really hot, uncomfortable, and you can't leave the air conditioning on when you're idling because NEA will come and find you, right? So now with an EV van, he could leave the air conditioning going, right, the whole day, even when he's not moving around, and he loves it. It's quiet, there's no vibrations. So part of it is really the change management to make sure that they embrace the change.
No, thank you so much for all our panelists. And I loved that point about manpower and change management, because ultimately you need the people's support and your own employees' support for this journey. So if we move on a little bit to sort of looking into the future, in the next 5 to 10 years, right now we are in, our favorite word is that we're in a period of uncertainty and volatility. A lot is going on, externally. We are looking at big disruptions on trade relations, geopolitics, etc., etc. And at the same time, really, when we look at the climate risks are really accelerating, and the logistics sector, of course, is one of the key sectors that could be impacted. So just looking ahead, what really are you seeing as the major risks but also opportunities, right? What are your companies thinking about into the future that you want to get a head start in to, basically gain market share, get the support of your customers, etc.? Anyone?
Okay, I guess for us, what I'm very excited about and my team is excited about, of course, is about digitalization and AI and the ability to incorporate that into our business in our day-to-day. Now, of course, one of the big challenges in logistics right now is the availability of manpower, right? And we, of course, sensed that dramatically during COVID when, we couldn't, when the borders closed from Malaysia and people couldn't come across. The logistics industry, many of the organizations suffered because they couldn't get more people. And in fact, even in the Changi airport, some of the air freight companies were challenged because they couldn't, even though the shipment gets into Singapore, they couldn't bring it out because they just didn't have enough people to manage, right, the shipments. For us, we were in a way lucky because we invested in automated guided vehicles inside our warehouse in Changi. We installed 15 of them that allowed us to remove forklift movements by humans inside the warehouse. Now that actually was for the purpose of safety. We reduced the number of forklift accidents inside our warehouse because these warehouses were working in the middle of the night between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. right? So fatigue and other things could set in. But because we removed those forklift movements, the AI, driven AGVs actually reduced accidents, and more importantly, it doubled our productivity because during COVID, volumes doubled, and we had the same number of people operating the forklifts, but they were just unloading and loading the containers, right? So that was exciting for us because it not only solved a manpower challenge that we had, we replaced diesel forklifts with electric AGVs. So not only were we more carbon efficient, we were safer as an environment as well. And then we see this theme continuing in the logistics industry where automation has to be key. But again, it's about change management because the forklift drivers were concerned when we were trying to deploy the AGVs. But because they trusted us, we're very focused on being a great place to work. And because they trusted us, we were able to be agile and pivot when we needed to.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. And I'm hearing that actually when you go electric, there are a lot of core benefits that may not even just be about sustainability. Maybe on to our other panelists as well. This question includes any technology that you're looking forward to and excited about.
I think the next stage in the logistics sector and where many companies are moving to is multimodality, right? So YCH is looking very closely at this. We started something called the Vietnam Super Port which is about an hour from Hanoi. What it is, it's a multimodal port combining air, land, rail, and sea connectivity within one location. So it has an inland container depot, it has an off-airport cargo terminal. It will be about 2 kilometers away from a railway that links directly to China as well. What this does, it serves multiple fronts. First of all, it's the efficiency, right? Because you can move towards a mode of transport that is quickest and most efficient for your company. You're not wedded to, say, using only air transport because it is faster, for example. You can use your road, you can use your rail as well. We're building a second one in Cambodia. Construction will start sometime next year, and we're looking to build 2 more around ASEAN by 2030. But with this, I think there is still a technology gap in terms of being truly multimodal, where, for example, one mode of transport can move seamlessly into another. I think right now there is some research to look at road and rail multimodality. So you go straight from the road onto the railway and then go straight to the country. So what this does is it saves time. It allows companies to switch very quickly between what is most efficient. And because rail is much more sustainable compared to most of other forms of transport, it means that it makes it much easier in terms of time savings, in terms of cost as well, to be able to transition between these modes. So once this accelerates, I think, in the logistics sector, more companies start to think about this multimodality and superport concept. I think this will be a game changer within the sector as well.
For me, I'll be more biased towards automotive technology, because we are interested in trucks. So I think automotive technology has come a long way since 10 years ago, where we just started electrifying vehicles, right? So we have come to a point whereby the advancement of electric automotives have outpaced the grid or the other infrastructure. So for me, the most exciting thing that is currently being developed right now, but it's not talked about enough, is decentralization of energy. So for example, like you have solar panels, you have ESS, energy storage systems, right? So for me, I think these are the most important technologies for the next 5 to 10 years, because this kind of decentralization of energy can actually reduce the cost for all the logistics players.
Thank you so much. And I really like the replies to this set of questions, because I think it makes us think much broader when we talk about sustainability. And actually that leads me to my last question before we open up for questions, which is really looking at partnerships and collaborations. I think in everything that we spoke about is not just one logistics company doing this alone. So looking forward, what are some of these partnerships and collaborations you think are going to be very, very important? It could be with standards bodies, technology providers, with government agencies. What do you think are the most important partnerships that will drive the next stage of sustainability?
Well, perhaps moving a little away from electrification, we at DHL are one of the biggest buyers of sustainable aviation fuel in the world. And one of the things that we are trying to collaborate with various governments is to drive the utilization, and set, shall we say, benchmarks that would get others to follow. And one of the things that we've been sort of talking about to various governments is, hey, right now, there's only sticks, right? You've got mandates, you've got compliance, and it's a cost of compliance way of thinking. But we are, talking to governments to say, hey, why don't you give those who are not just compliant, but above and beyond that, voluntarily using more sustainable aviation fuel, hey, why don't you give some incentives, for example, that may not be monetary in nature, right? So that has worth to airlines and so on, but it requires an ecosystem. If we are serious about decarbonizing logistics, then you need everybody to play a part, whether it's the players themselves or the technology providers and even the government. Yeah.
I think the technology partnerships are quite crucial in this, because we can implement a range of solutions, but if we're not tracking it properly, I think that becomes an issue, right? Because we are responsible to our customers who are asking for this data. We need to know how far we are in terms of this net zero journey as well, right? So one of the key partnerships we have is with a company that helps us to track this data as well. So it's all uploaded online. We can see where we are in terms of our emission profile as well. And this is really at the most basic level in terms of what needs to be done as well. But it is important to remember that I think for any company, we don't have complete knowledge. We need these partnerships. We need to work with different tech companies across the ecosystem to see what is possible, to see, for example, like we worked with EcoSwift in terms of our electric vehicles as well. We need to be able to engage and understand, what we can do next for this. And we need to keep our eyes open in terms of where the sustainability journey and where the sustainability technology is moving as we go forward as well.
I'll keep my answer short. You should partner me. No, but I'm just joking. But yeah, I think having a reliable fleet electrification solutions provider is something that is very important for a lot of fleet owners, because having someone reliable to guide you through what's the infrastructure needed, what's the hardware that you need, what's the software, what's the kind of changes you need to make. I think that is very important to electrify your fleets. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And on the last point, I think is important, right? You don't just buy a solution, it's about integrating it with your entire business that then really drives that outcome. So thank you. We'll move on to the next stage, where we've got a list of very exciting questions from the crowd. Thank you everyone for sending them in. And maybe to start, this has the, it seems like the most popular for now. It's on cost. And it is a big topic. Sustainability is costly. In this region, which places less of a focus on sustainability, how do you push your decarbonization initiatives while competing with less eco-conscious competitors? And I think related, another question is, then when you face that cost pressure, how do you convince your management that this is something worth doing?
Okay, first, I'd like to say that that is not always the case. And in fact, I would encourage everyone here to first go and measure your footprint. Because I remember 15 years ago when I first took on this portfolio of the Go Green program at DHL at the regional office. It was the financial crisis. Anybody remember that? Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, name familiar, right? They are all gone. That caused the whole world to go in a tailspin. And I was tasked with trying to drive the green agenda. And my colleagues looked at me and said, Chris, how are you going to convince us to invest in green when the world is falling apart? But because we committed to measuring our footprint accurately, I could actually prove to my team, my operations heads, that being carbon efficient was equivalent to being cost efficient. And how did I show that? Based on relamping all of our warehouses from fluorescent lights in 2009 or 2010 to LED lighting. That cut our power consumption dramatically for all our warehouses. That saved us 10 million euros a year. So it's not always more expensive. Understand your footprint first before we make a sweeping statement that is always more expensive. There will be pockets of opportunities where potentially you save costs. I gave the example of my EVs. I'm saving 35,000 Sing dollars a month running 100 EVs. It's not always more expensive. We've got solar panels that we invested in 2016 on the warehouse at our Changi Airport hub. At that time, people were saying, Chris, you're silly. You're paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour when the grid price was 10 cents. Okay, yes, I put in the solar panels and we generate about 75 kilowatt megawatt hours of electricity a month from the solar panels. And what's the grid price today for electricity? Anyone know? It's 30 cents. I'm still paying 15. We've been laughing all the way to the bank for the last couple of years. Right? So, to say that every sustainable solution is more expensive is not fair. Know your footprint, know your emissions, and you can then make good decisions. I'm not suggesting you do everything. There will be some cases that it is more expensive, but there are certain other payoffs, and you need to find what are those payoffs. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm very passionate about this because I keep hearing this question, and it's not always the case. You need to know what is the use case.
No, thank you very much. And I think it's also broadening how we think about sustainability. It's not always changing your entire fleet out to electrification. There are small things you can do that can generate real savings immediately. So moving on to the next question, I think this is for Sunil. You mentioned that getting the people on board is important, but were there any pushback to start, and hence the need to get them on board? Why were they not on board immediately?
Well, I think if I go back to the history of YCH as a company, and perhaps I could draw some lessons from that. In the early 1980s, we made the decision to become a very tech-heavy company. So that meant we started a technology arm called Y3 Technologies in 1981, very much at a time when logistics was a pen and paper industry. This, of course, was hard to get people on board because this was something that was unfamiliar, it was new, and people weren't sure where this was going, right? Computers and things like that were very, very much novel to people around the company, right? But over time, and over time meaning over a few years, people realized that warehouse management systems, transport, dock management systems actually made their lives much easier, right? For sustainability, I think we are going through the same process. For many people who've done certain things a certain way for a very long period of time, it is a change, right? And it's a change that perhaps may feel a bit uncomfortable or may feel a bit novel to have to drive electric vehicles, to move to things which are a bit more sustainable, which are a bit different. So the purpose of it, I think we were fortunate in the sense that there hasn't been too much resistance in that sense, but the purpose of this is, first of all, from a business perspective, to get people to appreciate that this is the way the industry is going, right? And this is the future of logistics. And second, of course, from a technical perspective, is to be able to understand what sustainability reporting is, how to do it, and train people. So we have a pipeline of talent to be able to serve these needs moving forward as well. Training is not straightforward. There are a few different angles and few different prongs we've taken to drive this forward. First is that we have something called the EduRise program, which trains people across the 15 markets where we're present in. They have a compulsory sustainability certification by the end of this 9-month program. So we make sure that as they come into YCH and work for us, across all our different markets, they are familiar and they know how sustainability works and what the purpose of it is as well. Right? I mentioned the Queen Bee program earlier as well. But it's all an entire ecosystem that we create to be able to ensure that the next generation of talent within our company is fully on board, and it's not just limited to one sustainability team, that the entire company moves ahead with this as well.
Thank you. The next question is about smaller companies. So I think one of our panelists, pointed out that DHL is, of course, a huge global company, and I think YCH homegrown, but still there's some skill. In your experience with SMEs, because they don't have that skill, I think some of them question, am I able to also do this? Would the cost for me be so much higher? From your experience, because I'm sure you work with your suppliers, do you see this playing out? Or, are there also ways to overcome that cost gap?
I think so. I think from what we see, the interventions for sustainability can be phased in a certain way, right? And there are certain low-hanging fruits that are extremely accessible to SMEs. As Christopher said earlier, solar power, solar energy and things like that. It actually helps us to drive costs and move costs much lower and make it much more sustainable for SMEs to actually compete and use these systems as well, right? So for sustainability, I think we also have to be realistic in terms of what can be done, what our cost drivers are as well, right? But there are interventions. Solar energy is one of them, and another one, of course, is buildings, right? So later next month, we'll be opening a new site in Tuas, right? And it will be a completely repurposed building, right? So we retrofitted it. We saved about, I think, 3,000 tons of carbon emissions from not breaking it down and rebuilding it again. But all this is not expensive. These are simple interventions we can make in order to be more sustainable, right? So I think the purpose of sustainability is so that we can all be healthier, we can all have longevity as a company, and that's the angle SMEs will be looking at as well.
Yeah, and maybe I could jump in very quickly. We do have what we call owner-operators. These are people who, they look like they're from DHL, but they are actually a third party. Now, over the last couple of years, quite a number of them have actually started to electrify their fleets. They realize that it's actually cheaper to run an EV than to run an ICE vehicle. So again, I would like to, debunk the myth that SMEs can't get into this. First, measure your footprint. Understand what are your emission levers, right? If you don't even know what your footprint is, then you can't do something with it. So, which is why a lot of people resist trying to even measure in the first place, but you can't manage what you don't measure. I think once people actually start doing the measuring, they'll start being able to see opportunities, right? And I think once they do that, even a small SME, look, scope 1 is nothing more than your fuel consumption. Scope 2 is nothing more than your electricity bill. Start measuring that. Understand what you can do to change some of these things. Scope 3, you can set that aside for the time being as an SME, right? But really, once you start thinking about those things and you win incrementally, it's an aggregation of incremental gains. And once you start adding these pieces together, all of a sudden you may start seeing a significant impact.
If I may also add, looking at our EcoSwift fleet on the roads right now, the Sunny fleets, actually most of them are from SMEs. Yeah. So and in fact, my order book for next year also mostly from SMEs. Yeah. So I don't think it's an obstacle, to be small. You can still contribute to sustainability.
I think that's a really wonderful message. And I think that's also because SMEs are not doing this alone. Actually, there are service providers out there. You can tap on existing infrastructure that can be shared, and that really brings your own upfront investment down, and you can reap the operational gains. Now, our time is up, but I do want to just ask everyone one quick question. We'll keep it tight, but what is one thing you're looking forward to for the sector in the coming year?
I'm looking forward to a lot more EVs running around in the country.
Okay, that's a good one.
I'm looking forward to the grants.
Okay, so LTA.
I'm looking forward to a much healthier, much more sustainable, and much stronger logistics sector because of all of that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's a very uplifting message. And thank you to our audience. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much.